Hari. In our Vaidika Sanatana Dharma, when we look at the rituals, traditions, customs, and the various other practices that have been insisted as, not insisted, but have been pointed at as the Shastra Sammata, the neo intellectuals that we are, we view it from our skewed perspective that these are restrictions that are being thrusted upon and they are meaningless. See, the purpose, when not understood, when the point of reference as to why something has been given, when that is not understood, and whatever else that has been as the process, methods, and those methods have been continued, that de-link that happens over a period of generations, especially with regards to the Bharatiya Sanskriti, which is Sanatana Dharma, the disconnect has been for about 700 years of the barbaric Islamic invasions, or 800 years. Then, because you take Babur as reference, then there is one time. If you take even before that, Muhammad Ghaznavi and Gori, so it will be about 800 years, and about 200 years of the imperial expansionists, the Christian mindset that got unleashed through the British India Company. So these processes, there has been a disconnect. But thanks to our ancestors, that these processes have been given intact. There is no discrepancy, there is no dilution in it. But it is high time that instead of standing on the sidelines and being a self-critique, self-loathing, self-disgusted, it's high time we understand and connect these dots. When you look at all these rituals, there was no disconnect. Anybody from any varna could perform these rituals. Any ashrama could perform these rituals. Probably more restrictions on the ashrama basis, because there are certain things which you have to do in, say, grihastha ashrama. I cannot do it in sannyas ashrama. Likewise, that which has to be done in sannyas ashrama cannot be achieved in the grihastha ashrama. So those rituals, I wouldn't even call them as rituals because there is a specific word for that. We call them as samskaras. Samskara means that which is implemented for self-purification, self-growth, a fine-tunement. In that fine attunement, our minds, our chitta, our antakarana becomes purified, and in that purified, focused mind, this moksha kangsha becomes intense, and there is a possibility of turning that moksha kangsha into a reality. So these samskaras, from womb to the tomb, these samskaras were given so that when we put it into practice, what is the purpose? That the sharira mana buddhi is finely attuned, and we reach to that point of subtle, sharp, deep intellect, where this spiritual sadhana for the purpose of moksha becomes or turns from being a possibility into a reality. Now, if you don't see it in this entire sequence of segment and then understand what is karma, what is dharma, what is bhakti, what is upasana, what is all these rituals about, it is to reach to this point wherein I can clearly understand without any fog, without any cloudedness of confusion. Because this Brahma Chintana and establishing this understanding that I am Brahman is possible in that pure mindset only. So the grandeur of this is that it is a complete package. If you pull one package and say, oh, I'm comfortable only with this, which is what we do with neo-intellectualism, that I take only the philosophy of it, or I'm a spiritualist, I don't believe in these rituals, or there are so many confusions. But it has to be holistically understood. Then with that pure intellect, we come to this point of recognition that the mind is available to recognize and to assimilate that which the entire scriptural literature, entire Shastra literature is pointing at. The purpose being again moksha sadhana. Chaturtha phalam avapyartham. Chaturtha phala of the purusharthas, the fourth phala, which is the moksha. Now, what does moksha mean? Moksha is not talking about finding liberation. When you talk from the standpoint of the Atma Chaitanya, Shuddha Chaitanya, it is always liberated. It was never bound. There's nothing other than it to bind it. Then what is moksha then? Moksha is to be liberated from the intellectual fallacy or wrong conviction that I am bound. And that feeling that I am bound is what keeps us so worked up and entangled. That has to be removed. In that process of removing it, Shravana, Manana, and the vast impact of layers of vasanas which keep pulling us, dragging us, because intellectually now I have gathered it, I have understood it. It is sharp, it is deep, I have understood it. But my old habitual practices, they keep pulling me away. That pull has to be cut asunder. Does it mean we don't have vairagya enough? Probably. Yes, fine-tuning and tweaking that vairagya, which means the viveka, atma anatma viveka, has to be strengthened. So going back to the basics and strengthening our vairagya based from that clarity of viveka. But still, in spite of that, there will be this long pull. To remove that is when we perform, or we are advised to sit in that ekanta and do this nididhyasana, a regular practice. Now it has been misused, abused, wrongly represented, misappropriated. The reason I say misappropriated is they will bash Hinduism, they will bash Sanatana Dharma, they will ridicule everything, but they will take yoga, they will take meditation, they will not even give the credit that this process is taken. And the audacity is they would say, oh, Patanjali's Yoga Sutra is not a part of Hinduism. Dhyana or yoga is not a part of Hinduism. Well, anyway, that is the politics of it. But these practices have gotten misused, abused. The purpose of dhyana in what is represented as through our scriptures is to remove this samskara dosha. That has to be washed away. And that has, as in Gurudev says, in the white heat of meditation, let all these samskara, vikara, vasana, let it crumble down to white ashes. And that is when Bhagavan Shiva wears it as his Tripundarika, a glowing victory over the limitations. So that is the point as to where this Nididhyasana stands, how important and how subtle this process is. So in that understanding, or in that process of understanding, we have come to this 259th shloka. So let us look into that part of Nididhyasana. Astabhedamanapāstalakṣaṇaṃ nistaraṅgajalarāśiniścalam nityamuktamavibhaktamūrti yat brahma tattvamasi bhāvayātmani. Each word so pregnant with meaning, so deep is its understanding. So let us start with the first three lines. First three lines talk about what that Brahman is. Yat tat Brahma tat aham asmi. That I am. That is the understanding. Here tattvamasi is not talking about tattvamasi, but it is tattvamasi. It is not the tatness, thatness, but it is that Brahman, which is of the nature of the first three lines, is my true nature. Hence, I cannot be bound entity. This sensation of feeling bound and limited is an acquired status which has to be removed. So let us look into it. Astabhedamanapāstalakṣaṇaṃ. Astabheda. Astabheda, that where all Bhedas have come to an end. Asta, like the Suryasta. So Asta, that Bheda has come to an end. What are the Bheda? We have been seeing Sajatiya, Vijatiya, Swagata, Bheda. So first let us see Vijatiya. There are animals, there are birds, there are plants, there are humans, there are insentient. So these are all different jatis. Vijati, separate jatis. Then when we say Swajatiya or Sajatiya, Vijatiya, Sajatiya. Sajatiya, within the human beings, we can say there is men and women. Within men, you can say, the Caucasian, the African American, then the Africans. They were moved to America later. Now we have a category called Afro-American. Then there are, the Asians, the Indians, the different classifications within human beings. So that is Sajatiya, within that jati of human beings. Then within the species, within the particular member of that species, say within that species, I would say Swagata, within me, what are the differences? I have a head, hopefully. I have two hands, two legs, and a torso that it is attached to. Then there are internal organs. These are all bheda, which is swagata. Astabheda. Here, asta is that which is seen as separateness. So, sajatiya, vijatiya, bheda, rahita. So, all these external characteristics of differences and divisions that we see, that does not exist in this Brahman. Then we move into the next one, anapāstalakṣaṇaṃ. Anapāstalakṣaṇaṃ, apasta means my thought went into food, that which is not pasta. No, apasta means tyaktam. Apastam means tyaktam, that which can be negated. Anapastam, that which can never be negated. Now, when we talked about Brahman, we referred to that Brahman or pointed to that Brahman, we were referred to through Viveka Chudamani, through tatastha lakshana and swarupa lakshana. Tatastha lakshana was this karya, which is called the Jagat or Prapancha, and the Adhara Adhisthana is that Brahman. So through that karya we point at the Karana. Can that be apasta? Can that be negated? Of course, that is the totality, and that is what we are negating in that Tatpada Vishleshana. So even that has to be negated. Therefore, we don't accept within the umbrella of Hindu when people say that yes, there is that Bhagavan also, there is this me also, there is Jagat also, everything is hunky-dory, everything is eternal. We say no. Even Bhagavad Darshana is considered not as the supreme stage because there are these differences. And that Tatastha Lakshana cannot be taken, that Ishwaratva cannot be taken as the ultimate or the finality of it, the substratum of it, which when this Karanatva is removed. So Anapasta Lakshanam is talking about Swarupa Lakshanam. Swarupa Lakshanam, that which I may be forgotten, I may have forgotten it, I may not remember it, I may not in my ignorance recognize it, but it nonetheless has been always this Satchit Swarupam. Just like the pot or the pot lid or the cup and saucer, they are all from the same material, clay. But inadvertently, intermittently, we have seen it as a separate padartha. But it has never ceased to be clay. That point has to be recognized. That point has to be understood. That it is that Swarupa which can never be given up, which can never be separated. It has always been, it shall always remain. When we again say Satchidananda Lakshanam, it is not Sat, Chit and Ananda. All three I am. No. All three are pointing at three different angles of looking at it, but they are three pointing at the same Brahma Tattva, Brahma Padartha. So it is not that I am Sat and Chit. Satchidananda Aham. Satchidanandoham. That is the understanding. And I have always been that Satchidananda. Anapasta Lakshana. Nistaraṅgajalarāśiniścalam. Nistaraṅgajalarāśiniścalam. Like in Bhagavad Gita, that shloka, Āpūryamanamacala pratishtham samudramāpah pravishanti yadvat. Apuryamanam achala pratishtham. There also achala, nischala meaning the same. In Andhra Pradesh, there is this habit of having the name as Chalapati. And I was a little confused. Why would somebody name themselves as Chalapati? Chala means that which is wobbly, constantly moving, constantly changing, pati of that. Then I was told, when I inquired, I was told, oh, it is name of Venkateshwara Balaji. Then there also I saw it is Venkata Chalapati. Now Venkata they have dropped and kept Chalapati, meaning Ashuddha Sandhi Vichhed. It should have been Venkata Achalapati. So once I was explaining this somewhere, and there was one Chalapati Rao sitting there, and he felt bad. I said, Swamiji, so my name doesn't mean anything. So for his sake, or for anybody's sake that has that name, so I said, look, Bhagavan Vishnu has two consorts, two aspects of power. One is called Chala Swarupa or Chanchala Swarupa, the other is called the Achala Swarupa. The Chanchala Swarupa is Lakshmi Devi. So Chalapati is the one who is Shripati. I felt good. I mean, you can interpret it that way. But here, Achalam means that which is, see, you can take a movement can happen, like I can move this hand from here to there to here, or whatever is the action that I do. There is a movement possible because there is that space. There is that room for it. In this Chidghana, homogeneous mass or entity, there is nothing other than it. So there is no movement. So does it mean that it is not? No, it is nistaraṅgajalarāśiniścalam. So in our Chinmaya Mangalam, there's this beautiful lake. And the early morning classes there is one of the most outstanding experiences. There's a deck in that lake and sitting there and conducting it. Because in the mornings, it is somehow a lake which does not have even a single ripple. And it reflects everything, rejects nothing, retains nothing. It's a complete mirror. So nistaraṅgajalarāśiniścalam is, though there is chalana, movement of this prapancha, the substratum is constant. It does not move. If I identify any movement as an experience of this nididhyasana, dhyana abhyasa, whether it is sound, whether it is light, whether it is levitation, whether it is a feeling, whatever is the movement. Are we there yet? No, we are not. Far from it. That understanding has to be there. That I should not get lost in that to be claimed as the spiritual glow or spiritual attainment. Because there are a lot of people that sell the new age spirituality as, do you feel it? Do you levitate? It has got nothing to do with these movements. That nischala tattva is my, and this Bhagavan Adi Shankaracharya ji mentions it very clearly as the steps of ladder. Satsangatve, Shravana happens. Nissangatvam, that Shravana Viveka should lead us to Purna Vairagya, Nissangatvam. Nissangatve, Nirmohatvam, the delusion should be gone. Because of that Nissanga. Nirmohatve, nischala tattvam. I reach to that unshakable platform of quietude within. That conscious quietude is my true nature, is that Brahman. And it is nityamukta vastu. Nityamukta vastu, it is never bound. Therefore, in the beginning, when I was introducing this shloka, I said, what is moksha then? Or there are some who say, why should I care for being free? Why should I put an effort for being free? It is not that you are trying to put an effort to be free. It is the effort to remove the notion that I have been bound. A completely different, oh, it's the same difference. No, it is not. I am not trying to be free. I was never bound. To understand that I was never bound. Because that is why when we say moksha, who is getting moksha? It is that intellect which has this wrong notion, which is where this moksha is happening. The body or this padartha of prapancha, that will be jada. That does not know what moksha means. On the other hand, Atma Chaitanya, Shuddha Chaitanya is always remained unbound. So it will not seek moksha. Then who is seeking moksha? It is this seeming entity which has borrowed its empowered existence of sentiency, which is in the buddhi, this jivatma who is feeling limited. That notion that I am limited because I am identified as this jiva, that has to be broken in the intellect. Therefore, when we talk about sitting in this meditation, we are not talking about reaching to a state of no-mindedness. Therefore, we don't accept the final culmination of the yoga sadhana, which talks about the final culmination part. The rest of it, he does a very good tvampada vichara. So the finality of it, when he says chitta vritti nirodha, we'll come to that whole idea of what that chitta vritti nirodha, whether it is or whether it is not, will come in a later part. But here, to understand that we are not aiming for nullifying this mind, but rather to come to that one conscious thought that I was never bound. I can never be bound. This consciousness, can never ever be tied down to anything. It has always remained unbound. This notion of being bound has to be broken. Why? That Brahma Tattva is nityamukta. That's why I love the last name of Puja Gurudev's Swami Chinmayananji's Ashtottara Shatanamavali, where he says, where it describes him, Nitya Shuddha Buddha Mukta Swarupaha. That it is Nitya Vastu, that which is being invoked as Gurudev, he is that Nitya Vastu, which is Shuddha Vastu, which is Buddha Vastu and Mukta Vastu. Therefore, not and, but therefore it is a Mukta Vastu. And that is the nature of Brahman. Nityamuktam Avibhaktamūrtim. Avibhaktamūrtim. There is no vibhajana, there is no divisions. Now in the first one, when we saw astabheda, there we talked about sajatiya and vijatiya bheda. Here avibhaktamūrti, because there is nothing else that can destroy there is nothing that can destroy this Atma Chaitanya because there is no other Padartha other than it. So one might say, how about, sometimes I bite into my own tongue, I poke into my own eye. Why? There are a lot of reasons. So we do see that happen. So are there limbs where self-destruction can happen? Avibhaktam. There is no self-destruction possible because there are no limbs. Limbless. That's why I say nirguna nirakara. There is no form, attributes or parts to it. That is called Sat. That is called Chit. And this Brahman, Yat Brahma, Tat Ahamasmi iti bhavaya. This has to be constantly contemplated upon. That what? Nitya Buddha Mukta Avibhakta Yat Brahma Padartham, that Brahma Padartha which is Nitya Buddha Mukta Swarupa, Avibhakta Swarupa, Tat Brahma Aham Eva Asmi. That is my true nature. It is Phutataram, with clear understanding, unshakable understanding. Chintaya Bhavaya Nityam. Constantly has to be meditated upon. Nididhyasana has to be done. See how beautiful this is. We'll continue with the next shloka in our next